Hi, my name is Rick Bloodworth, and today is day 35 of the 90-day study through the New Testament. The study today is going to be a relatively short one. It consists of Acts chapter 12 through Acts chapter 14, and we're going to read about some of the different things that the apostles were doing at that time. Starting in Acts chapter 12, we're going to read about Herod putting James, the apostle, to death. James was the brother of John, who was also an apostle. And then we read how he arrested Peter and how Peter was released from prison miraculously. As we go on through this study, we get to chapter 14 and we start looking at the apostle Paul and Barnabas on a missionary journey. They're going from town to town. They're preaching the good news. In Acts chapter 14, verse 3, it tells us that Paul and Barnabas spoke boldly and that God allowed them to preach the gospel or the good news of His grace, the message of His grace, and He confirmed it with the signs and the wonders that they were able to do. If you've ever wondered why there were miraculous signs and wonders back during the New Testament times and we don't see them today, well, that's the reason. They were confirming a new message. They were telling people about the Messiah, about Jesus being the Son of God. Well, here's a new message. How do they know this message is really from God? Well, God left no shadow of a doubt. He used His signs, His miracles, and His wonders to prove that what the apostles were saying had His authority. Well, there's something else in Acts chapter 14 that's kind of interesting. In verse 23, we read about as Paul and Barnabas were going from town to town that they start appointing elders or pastors in each of these churches. Well, why did they do that? And the answer, why did they wait so long? It's now been about 15 or 20 years since the day of Pentecost, since the first gospel sermon was preached, since the church was established. And so why wait so long? Well, I think we find the answer to that in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 6, when it gives the qualification for the elders, shepherds, pastors, whatever they were referred to at a particular time, talking about the same group of people who have that spiritual oversight of each church. And it talks about the fact that they cannot be novices. They cannot be recent converts. And so maybe that explains why it took 15 or 20 years before we see the first elders being appointed. One other thing, as you go through the New Testament, you'll always see when you look at the different churches that they appoint a plurality of elders. They're referred to as elders, not the elder or the pastor, but they're talked about as having elders. Matter of fact, a little bit later on, we're going to see Paul going to Ephesus, and he's going to call the elders from the church at Ephesus to him. And so that's another important thing. But again, we're going to read a lot of things within the book of Acts that tell us about the formation of the church, about how God did that, and how He made sure that we got His word in just the right form. As they were establishing the church, the apostles were also writing through inspiration the letters and the books that would make up the New Testament. Inspired by God, He certainly has preserved it through the years, and now we have that message so that we can read it and study it today. Back then, they had the apostles with them. They could teach the Word and they could confirm that Word with miracles. But now, 2,000 years later, we have the New Testament before us so that we can see what God's instruction is. And of course, that's why we're studying it, is we want to find out what God has for the church so that we can do it to the best of our abilities. Well, I hope that your study today goes very well, and I hope we'll see you tomorrow.